Hey guys, welcome back to our channel, and today
What? Today we're talking about wiring. So before we talk about where we actually ran the wires, I wanted to show you the wires that we used for all of this. So I'm going to start with this. This is the thickest wire that we use. Now you're going to notice something in every wire that we use. We always use stranded conductor. So obviously there's two types. There's a solid core conductor and a stranded conductor. Solid core means it's one piece. That's the stuff you have in your house. The Romex that runs all your lights and stuff like that. It's basically one solid conductor. The problem is in a van there's all these vibrations, there's all this movement, and if that one conductor starts to flex back and forth, it'll eventually break over time, and you've got to figure out where your problem is. This has many smaller conductors, so they're less likely to break. If they do break, there's many more of them to carry that current still. So every wire we use has a stranded core. Now this is 4-gauge wire. It is meant for outdoor environments. I think it's called welding cable or welding and battery cable. Rated to 600 volts, minus 50C, plus 105C. So it's meant to withstand some pretty harsh environments. This has one use. It runs from our DC to DC charger in the back of our van to our van battery up here. In fact, you can even see it. So this runs, we started this here, we ran it through all these trim pieces next to the driver's seat, ran it through the back and across the van, and it connects to our DC to DC charger. Now, I think the DC to DC charger actually only takes 6-gauge wire. This is 4-gauge, which means this is thicker, but I wanted to be able to upgrade that component later without having to worry about the wire that we put in. So that's why we stuck with the 4-gauge wire for this. So next one is, you're going to see this stuff a lot. This is marine grade wire. So we've used two types. We used a 14 gauge with 2 conductors, and we used a 12 gauge with 3 conductors. Now you might be wondering, do I really need to use marine grade wire for my van? So I guess the way you think about it is, the sea is a pretty harsh environment, right? It's not only is it the water itself, but there's the salt in the water, there's other things in the water, there's the harsh weather, and this is made to withstand that kind of environment. So if you look at the actual wire itself, this is also stranded like we talked about, but this actually looks like, if you were to just look at this, you would think this must be aluminum or something like that. It's actually copper plated, electroplated with tin. So copper is a great conductor of electricity. The problem is, in the presence of water, copper will oxidize. If you've ever seen the Statue of Liberty, it's green. It didn't start out green. It's made of copper but oxidized over time. And as copper oxidizes, it loses its ability to conduct electricity. So the tin plating makes this much more resistant to corrosion. Also, marine grade wire is supposed to be thicker than standard wire. So 14 gauge marine grade wire is supposed to be thicker than standard 14 gauge wire, so it can carry more current. The only other thing is the jacket of it. So this white jacket is made of PVC, and it's made to be extremely flexible. So this is designed to go in these weird nooks and crannies in boat hulls and things like that. Also, it's supposed to be weather resistant so that it doesn't crack. So I guess if you've got a cheaper material and the sun beats on it for a long time, eventually it's going to dry out and it's going to crack, and that it gives you a place for water to get in and possible corrosion of the wires. This protects against that. So do you need it for your van? It'll probably work without it, of course, but you spend so much time and so much money getting the van built the way you want it. It's probably worth spending a little bit extra money and using wire that you know is going to last for the long haul. So I would certainly recommend it. It's easy to run because it's really flexible, and you know it's going to last and it's not going to corrode. So I think it's definitely worthwhile investment. So this is the 14.2. This is 14 gauge, 2 conductors. This was for all our DC stuff. And then our AC stuff was 12 gauge and 3 conductors. Again, still stranded, still tinned copper, but this has 3 conductors, and we use this for all our AC needs. So this is for our water heater and our plugs and our induction cooktop and things like that. So 14 gauge 2 and 12.3 for the AC. The other part is the now we get to the DC wiring. So we use mostly this stuff for the DC wiring. So this is not marine grade cable, but it is outdoor rated cable. It's made for automotive and those kind of environments outdoors. We use this for all our lights. So this was really nice and easy to run because we just basically were able to put it anywhere, and then we would kind of zip tie it to the larger wires which were already put in place. So we ran this for all our puck lights. It ran to our switches and everything. The only thing left is this green wire. So the reason we needed this was because we have a couple of three-way switches. So the main lights that are down the center of the van, we can control from 2 spots. We can control from here when you first walk in, and then we can control from next to the bed before we go to sleep. So between those 2 three-way switches, you need a third conductor, and that's what we're using this for. And actually, before I bought this brand new roll, which I haven't opened yet, I ran out of it. So the final strand of lights in the back, I actually hooked up with this, which is perfectly fine. It's basically the same thing. So that is pretty much it. 14 gauge wire for DC, 12 gauge wire for AC, and then we ran a couple of bigger things. I didn't run solar yet because we haven't gotten the solar panels in, so that's hopefully going to come this week or next week. So we're holding off on that piece of it. But now that we've talked about the wires, let me show you what we put in place. If you watched our last video, you know that we basically did the entire wiring design on an online program called Smart Draw, and we broke it out into different pages. So we've got a page for heavy gauge wiring, we've got another page for AC wiring, and then DC wiring, puck lights, things like that. And I was just going through it this morning since we've run all our wiring, and I realized we completely missed a circuit. So there's supposed to be 4 puck lights that go under the cabinets in the back of the van, and I never ran any wiring for them. So we're gonna have to get to that. But the thing is, if I hadn't drawn it out like this, I never would have known. We would have closed up the ceiling and forgotten those lights. So it's definitely important to make a good plan ahead of time. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through each page of this and show you where we ran the wires. And then when we get to the puck lights, we're gonna fix our problem that we created, and we'll go ahead and explain what we did for them. First page, heavy wiring. So only 2 wires involved here. One is the 4 gauge wire that we talked about a few minutes ago. This basically runs to our van batteries through here. So we had to remove a lot of these trim pieces to get to it. We ran it down through here, and then it comes out the back through the driver's seat way back here. So what's going to eventually happen is we will put a lug on the end of that, and that is going to connect to some of the terminals that are under the positive side. The negative side will also be, I'll have a lug on a connector on that, and that will connect to one of these here. So we're going to leave that for later. That's how it's going to go. There's also going to be before we connect this to here, that we'll have a fuse, like a mega fuse, probably a 60 amp mega fuse between here and the terminal, and that takes care of that. Now this runs through the trim pieces to the back of the van. So let me show you. So that wire comes out under here, runs through here through some conduit right along the back of the van, eventually comes out here. We send it over the top, and the other end of it is here, where it will connect to our DC to DC converter, so DC to DC charger. I could have ran it this way and saved probably 10 feet of wire. I just didn't want to have to deal with it. I calculated about a 1% voltage drop for the extra distance, so I think we're good. The only other wire on that page is right over here, and that is a 10 gauge marine grade wire that goes to our shore power inlet. It again comes out here, goes through the same conduit with the 4 gauge wire up, and comes out over here. So that handles everything for our heavy wiring.
Okay, now that we've done all the heavy wiring, then we ran wiring for the AC.
Yep.
Very important.
And there's
3.
Yes, one for the
Cooktop.
yes, and one for the
Outlets.
and the third one is for the
Water.
heater.
Heater.
Oh,
Water
I love
heater.
Yes. All right, so 3 of them. And let me show you where we ran those. Okay, so all our AC wiring starts right here. And I would recommend as soon as you run a wire, label it. Because by the time you've got 3 of these things run, you've forgotten what the first 2 are for. So get them labeled right from the start. So all AC wiring starts here. The first one for the hot water heater runs from here to a switch up in the upper cabinet and then down through here. So this is where our hot water heater will actually plug in. The second circuit is for various AC outlets throughout the van. So it runs to different points in the van where you can plug stuff in, a computer, blender, hair dryer, stuff like that. The third one is actually for the induction cooktop, which will live about here. Haven't run that one yet because that's going to be out in the open just through the cabinets. We can do that later. We're really worried about everything that goes through the ceiling now because we want to get that part done. Next thing we go to is what we labeled DC switched wiring. So this really is only for 2 devices in the whole van. This is just for the motorized ball valves on the bottom of the gray water tank. So basically that red and black wire that I mentioned before, it starts here. It runs to 2 DC switches that are in the upper cabinet along with the water heater switch and all our other components, and then runs down the side of the van. It'll go through the floor of the van and to the ball valves on those gray water tanks. So the cool thing is we need to empty those. We can actually do it from in the van. We don't have to get out and do anything.
In our pajamas.
In our pajamas. How exciting. Next page we're looking at is the DC non-switch wiring. So this is devices that get a constant flow of DC power, and then either they have their own on-off switch or they have a remote control, or they just kick on automatically by some other process. We don't have to turn it on or off. And there's a bunch of these. So the first, and everything here is this 14-2 wire that we looked at before, this 14-2 exterior grade wire. So there is a circuit for the DC outlet. So everywhere there's an AC outlet, there's going to be a DC outlet coupled with it. So if you want to plug in laptops or phones or something like that, we can do that. There is a circuit that goes to the max air fan right above our heads, and then that's controlled by an on-off switch. There is a circuit that goes to some reading lights that are over above the bed. So above our heads there'll be 2 reading lights, and they have a little on-off switch on them, so they just need a constant source of power. The water heater, not the water heater, the water pump will also sit here. That actually gets turned on when it senses a drop in the pressure. So as you turn on the faucets, water's released, the pressure drops, the pump kicks on. We'll probably also have a master switch for that, probably somewhere buried in here or next to it. That way if we ever have to work on the plumbing, we can do that and we can just turn the thing off completely. Next is the Nature's Head or Airhead toilet. That gets a constant flow of DC. It uses almost no power. The max air fan, the AC unit in the front, and that is pretty much it. The only thing left is the refrigerator and the Webasto heater, but those we'll worry about later because those are accessible from inside the garage, so we'll just run the wires for those later. That's it. By the way, our van stinks. So we have these mothballs, just so you know, these mothballs, because they're supposed to keep away wasps, which are all over the place, and it actually doesn't seem to be doing anything for the wasps, but pretty much making us sick.
Yeah. Doesn't smell too good.
No. So, okay, next page. Last page we're looking at is the puck lights page. Now, this is where we messed up. So there is actually 4, well, there's going to be 4 circuits. We only ran 3 of them. We completely forgot about the 4th one. So one circuit powers all the lights in the kitchen. There is a switch in the kitchen that's going to turn on 2 under cabinet lights on each side of the kitchen, so for a total of 4. There's going to be a second circuit that's just for the shower, so there'll be a switch on next to the shower. It'll turn on 2 puck lights in the shower. The third one is the main overhead light. So there's actually 2 rows of puck lights going down the center of the van with another one right in front of the sliding door, so there's light as soon as you walk in. The 4th one is supposed to be for under cabinet lights here. We never ran it. So we're going to run that now, and we're also going to take the back 2 puck lights, which are above Tanya's head, and we're going to include those in this circuit. So you could almost think about this as bedroom lights. So we'll have a circuit for kitchen lights, a circuit for bedroom lights, a circuit for shower lights, and a circuit for hallway lights. How's that?
So 4 zones.
4 zones. And we're about to do that one right now. So we fixed our problem with the puck lights. We've run an additional circuit, so we've labeled this bedroom lights. It runs from where our switch is going to be here, through a hole in the ceiling, out to here, through our upper cabinet, and we'll worry about this later. Here it's zip tied to the ceiling, another loop of it to catch these last two puck lights, down to our other cabinets. So this is everything we need for that circuit. So we are done with our wiring. So a couple general notes. Try to work as neat as you can. Try to make sure everything is clearly labeled, because it is really easy to forget what everything goes to once you've run a couple wires. These wires that are loose now, we're going to wrap insulate. We've got some Havelock wool left over, so we'll probably wrap Havelock wool around these things. Not that we really have to insulate the wires. I just don't want to hear that while we're driving. So we'll probably wrap everything in wool before we put the ceiling up. The other thing to consider is wherever the wire is running through exposed metal, there's a lot of sharp edges. So we've put this wire loom conduit, especially in some of these areas where the wire runs through is really tight down in here. So definitely try to use this stuff to protect the wires. So this seems like a lot of wiring all over the van. There certainly is easier ways to do this. I see people with van builds with looks like 3 or 4 wires. We were pretty particular about where we wanted outlets to be, where we wanted switches to be, which is why we've got a lot of extra wiring than we probably need. But it's all done, and it's going to allow us to put switches exactly where we want and kind of get the aesthetic that we're looking for.
Okay, so we are done. So we are done with the wiring. On to the next thing. What's going to be the next project?
Next is going to be the ceiling. So today is Good Friday. This is Easter weekend. We've got a huge weekend coming up. We've got all the kids coming over, and it's so rare to be able to get them all together. We're really excited. We've got a big day planned. Tania made all these games. She decorated, got all these eggs together. We've done a lot of cooking. The problem is we've got a house full of cedar planks. So we bought these planks this week. Yeah, we bought these planks, maybe it was last week.
I think it was last week.
Yeah, we bought them last week at a lumber yard near here. They are absolutely beautiful. They're going to look great on the ceiling. The problem is she painted them or put the polyacrylic on there, and then we had this really bad couple of days of pollen, and we didn't want pollen to get all over them, so they are in the house. So they've been literally drying through the kitchen, the living room, the dining room. They are everywhere. So we've got to get those things out of there, and we've got to go ahead and start installing them.
That's a good motivation to get the ceiling going too.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. So thank you so much for joining us. If you liked the video, please click the like button. We hope it was helpful to you. If you want to leave a comment, please do so down below. It's been great hearing from all of you. And if you want to follow along on our entire process, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. So we hope you have a wonderful weekend. Happy Easter, and we will see you soon.
Bye.